some big news when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals. So a lot of wide receiver changes. So they trade for Robbie Anderson, they activate DeAndre Hopkins from the suspended list, and they lose Marquis Brown for maybe 6 weeks with a foot injury. We'll get into all of that, as well as their backfield when they're dealing with injuries to James Conner, Darrell Williams, and now potentially Eno Benjamin. The Saints get Chris Olave back, but they're still going to be without Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry on Thursday night. Olave not on the injury list, so that's good news for him. Carson Wentz going to be out likely 4 to 6 weeks after having surgery on his finger. So Taylor Heineke now the new quarterback in Washington for the foreseeable future. Dak Prescott is expected to practice on Wednesday and play Sunday against the Lions. That's great news. Tua is going to return against the Steelers on Sunday night, and Rashad Bateman is close to return according to John Harbaugh. So keep that in mind when it comes to Devin Duvernay. Let's talk about the Cardinals receiving corps here. So big story clearly yesterday was Robbie Anderson being traded from Carolina to Arizona. We knew he was on his way out after getting to a argument with his coaching staff on the sidelines there. They acquire him, they send a 2024 6th round pick and a 2025 7th round pick, so obviously not a lot of compensation coming back. Marquis Brown out for at least 6 weeks, according to the NFL Network, with a non-surgical fracture in his foot, and DeAndre Hopkins now back after being suspended for the first 6 games. So, along with Rondelle Moore, Zach Ertz makes sense of this Cardinals passing him.
So let's start with Hopkins. Now that he's back, he figures to be the #1 target getter there. It especially helps him that Marquis Brown is out, and that makes it a little more clear for fantasy managers too, because there could have been a case where Brown could have kept the target volume, not as high as it's been, but certainly higher than what Hopkins could have had. That's out the window. I don't think Robbie Anderson's going to take over target for target from what Marquis Brown had. I think that that Hopkins is going to be the #1 target getter. And I think it's good for Zach Ertz too, because we've seen Zach Ertz lose that target share when DeAndre Hopkins is on the field. But now that Hopkins is back but Brown's out, and Robbie Anderson, I don't see him having a big role. I think Ertz is still usable as a must-start fantasy tight end. I feel okay with Rondelle Moore as a #3 receiver in full PPR. Don't feel great about Robbie Anderson doing anything to help my team.
Yeah, you got Hopkins as the #1, Robbie Anderson as the field stretcher, Rondelle Moore as that slot option, which has been an 8 to 10 target per game guy. Now, he's not going to do very much with those targets. We've seen that in 2 years. Much higher ranked for Rondelle Moore in full PPR than he will be in non-PPR. And I would expect it's A.J. Green just not playing anymore. They've thrown the ball to him 22 times this year, produced 56 yards on those 22 targets.
The slot role for the Cardinals, whether it was Greg Dortch or Rondelle Moore, there was the one game where they played at the same time, but it has produced 13 PPR points in 4 of 6 games, the one game where they played together, and then last week only 10 PPR points for Rondelle Moore, but it has been sort of consistent with that role, so that should keep you a little bit comfortable with when it comes to Rondelle Moore at this point. But a lot in play here with the Cardinals. They also lost Justin Pugh, one of their key offensive linemen, so not a good situation there. Let's move on now. And then just in terms of the running back situation, we expect Eno Benjamin to play on Thursday, but as of now, no James Conner, no Darrell Williams. Both those guys did not practice on Monday. It's just a guesstimate on the injury report. But if Eno Benjamin is out, just take a look at Keontae Ingram as somebody to maybe add, because he would get a lot of work even if the offense is struggling. So someone to want to keep an eye on there as well. For the Saints, in that same game on Thursday night, Chris Olave is off the injury report, good to go. Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, however, did not practice on Monday. They're not expected to play on Thursday. So we're waiting to find out the Saints quarterback situation, whether it's going to be Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. Heath, Chris Olave, must-start guy?
He's a must-start guy. I've got him as a low-end #2 wide receiver, and it's only because, and Adam Azar's talked about this a lot, the Cardinals against #1 wide receivers has been absolutely fantastic. And so I do think it's a tough challenge. I'd like him a little more if Jameis played, but a low-end #2 wide receiver with all the guys we have on buys, you're probably starting him.
All right, we'll see what happens there when it comes to the Saints receiving corps for the foreseeable future. Keep an eye on Jawan Johnson. The Cardinals are really bad against tight ends, and he just had a season-high 6 targets. In Washington, Taylor Heineke is going to take over for Carson Wentz. We don't know for how long. There is a report that they're not sure if they're going to put Wentz on IR, but he is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks, so it would probably make more sense from a procedural standpoint to place him on injured reserve to lock him away for those 4 weeks to heal his finger and see what he could do at the end of the season. More importantly, Taylor Heineke could be an option in 2 quarterback leagues, Dave, but Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and Logan Thomas when they return, what does this do for those pass catchers in Washington?
I think it makes them no better than what they've been already, and I certainly expect Washington to continue leaning on Brian Robinson as the main cog of their run offense, which means they'll throw less. And so last year we didn't even get Terry McLaurin averaging 15 PPR points with Taylor Heineke. I don't expect him to be anywhere better than 12, 13 PPR points, which is right around where he's lived. Samuel continues to tank for me. It's someone that I don't want to start. And Jahan Dotson, someone I do want to have on my bench, because I do think he will have some good games moving forward. They're just going to be hard to predict, because I don't think he can score every week like he was doing at the beginning of the year.
And Dotson did say when he hurt his hamstring that there was no timetable for him to return, so we'll see what that means. Deandre Brown did have a 2-touchdown game 2 games ago, but that was with Carson Wentz. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully Terry McLaurin starts to pick things up a little bit. This is a quarterback that he's had some success with over the last couple of seasons. But you see what Taylor Heineke has done as a career starter here for Washington. Only 5 games with more than 20 fantasy points in 2021 of the 16 starts that he made. So not the best fantasy option there, although the weapons for Washington this year are much better compared to what he had last season. The quarterback we are excited about seeing is Dak Prescott. Has been out since week 1 with a thumb injury, going to practice on Wednesday, and by all accounts is going to play on Sunday against the Lions in week number 7. Heath, we talked about this yesterday. Let's just reiterate it again. Must-start quarterback for Dak, and what does this mean for the receiving core in Dallas?
CeeDee Lamb is a top 5 wide receiver. Michael Gallup becomes very appealing as a boomer-bust number 3 wide receiver. I would expect it will be Lamb and Gallup, and then if Dalton Schultz gets back, those 3 as the primary target getters. Don't have a lot of hope for Noah Brown.
Gallup is over the threshold of guys that we talk about, over 65%. He's right around 70% rostered on CBSSports.com leagues. Pick him up where available because there could be a big ceiling for him moving forward. And the same thing with Dalton Schultz. He's about 86% rostered. If he's healthy, can go back to being the guy we hoped for at the beginning of the season, but again, still dealing with that knee injury, so just keep that in mind. The Dolphins are getting Tua Tagovailoa back in week 7 against Steelers. Dave, is Tua back as a must-start fantasy quarterback, and what does this mean for Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, who we assume is going to be healthy, and Mike Gesicki coming off a 2-touchdown game?
Can I temper what you said when you said must start? Because he's not a must start fantasy quarterback, but with so many quarterbacks on bye this week, you've got to start considering guys who have high upside. And Tua's got high upside, just given the fact that he's got Tyreek Hill on the field with him. We hope that he's got Jalen Waddle on the field, but he might have a shoulder injury that could keep him out. Mike McDaniel talked about that after the game on Sunday. If he's out, Mike Gesicki could actually step up and be a good target for Tua Tagovailoa. But to answer your question, he is in my top 12 this week, but toward the bottom.
Yeah, I think he might be a must-start. This offense is 3rd in passing yards, and they've played a game and a half with Skylar Thompson and a game and a half with Teddy Bridgewater. I think there's a chance that Tua Tagovailoa is a top 8 quarterback and maybe even a difference maker the rest of the way.
The one thing, though, I'll just push back on, he's had one good fantasy game
Right.
this year. Now, granted, he's been banged up. Obviously, he's missed the majority of the last 3 weeks, missing the last 2 games for sure. But it's the Baltimore game, and that's it in terms of being over 20 fantasy points. We might just be overvaluing Tua a little bit. Hopefully it's not the case because the receivers have put up good numbers. He just has not found the end zone consistently enough. So just keep that in mind. I think you can get better production potentially from Matt Ryan, from Jimmy Garoppolo. So Tua, not necessarily a must-start for me, but obviously a little bit more optimistic for you guys. And then just one note again on the Rashad Bateman situation. Close to return, doesn't necessarily guarantee he's going to play against the Browns in week number 7. So Devin Duvernay could have another good opportunity. Did not play well last week, but a little bit better matchup against the Browns. All right, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to get into your waiver wire options. But of course, send us your questions on Twitter. Please use the hashtag AskFFT. That way we know you're looking for us and we can help you with your fantasy dilemmas.